The courtroom was silent except for the soft rustle of papers and the steady tapping of the judge's gavel. Judge Harrison was known for his strict demeanor, his no-nonsense attitude, and his ability to maintain absolute control over every case that passed through his courtroom. His reputation as a tough, unwavering judge was known across the county, and for good reason. He ran a tight ship, and everyone who entered his court knew to follow his rules, or else. Today was no different. The case at hand was a difficult one, involving a young woman charged with theft. Her lawyer had been presenting a strong defense, but Judge Harrison wasn't easily swayed. His eyes were sharp as he listened, his mind already calculating the right sentence. Just as the attorney wrapped up, a small voice cut through the air, startling everyone in the room. "I'm hungry," came the voice, loud enough to echo through the otherwise tense silence of the courtroom. The sound of it was so out of place, so unexpected, that it took a moment for anyone to react. Judge Harrison's gaze immediately snapped to the source of the disruption. At first he thought it was one of the attorneys or someone in the gallery, but then he saw her, a little girl, no older than 7, sitting quietly in the front row, clutching her stuffed bear. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The lawyers froze, the defendant's mother looked mortified, and even the bailiff seemed unsure of what to do. But it was Judge Harrison's reaction that had everyone on edge. He stared at the girl, his stern face unchanging. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. The little girl, her wide eyes full of innocence, repeated herself more quietly this time. "I'm hungry, sir." The entire room seemed to collectively exhale, as if the weight of the moment had caught everyone off guard. The judge looked back at the defense table, his expression still unyielding. "Are you bringing children into my courtroom now?" he asked, a hint of annoyance creeping into his voice. The little girl's mother, sitting next to her, quickly leaned down and whispered to her, trying to hush her. But it was too late. The interruption had already happened. Judge Harrison's eyes softened for a moment, the steely resolve beginning to break as he observed the child. But the silence hung in the air like a thick fog, the tension palpable. I'm sorry, Your Honor," the mother stammered, visibly embarrassed. She hasn't had lunch yet. She's just a little tired." The judge looked down at his desk for a moment, a soft sigh escaping his lips. He cleared his throat before speaking again, but this time his tone was gentler, almost as if he was trying to hold on to his composure in front of the room. "I see," he said. "Well, I would suggest you take her outside and get her something to eat. We'll resume the proceedings once she's settled down." But the mother's voice faltered as she reached to take her daughter's hand. "I'm afraid I don't have anything to give her. We've been here all day." The words hung in the air, and for the first time in his long career, Judge Harrison found himself in a difficult position. The rules he had enforced with an iron fist didn't seem to apply in this situation. The stern, strict judge was now facing something he wasn't prepared for. A child, hungry, in need of something as basic as food, and it felt as if he were the one who had been caught off guard. The courtroom buzzed with a quiet hum after Judge Harrison called for the short break. For the first time, there was no sharp tap of his gavel, no stern reprimand. Instead, he watched as the courtroom came to life, a mixture of uncertainty and confusion in the air. Lawyers and spectators exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. The young girl, sitting with her mother, was now calm, her eyes brightening as she clutched her stuffed bear in her arms. Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming lightly on the wooden surface of his desk. The image of the little girl's innocent face, her simple request, echoed in his mind. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt so off balance. The rules of the courtroom had always been clear, strict, unemotional, unyielding. But now, for the first time in his career, he was facing something far more human than any legal argument. His eyes flicked to the clock. 15 minutes. That was how long the break would be. It was a short time, but in the midst of this turmoil, it felt like a lifetime. The bailiff approached him, her face uncertain. "Your Honor, should we call for someone to bring in food for the child?" Judge Harrison looked up at her, his face betraying no emotion, yet his mind was in turmoil. "Yes, please. Have something simple delivered for her. Nothing fancy, just something that will help." The bailiff nodded and turned to leave, but as she walked past the defense table, she paused and exchanged a brief word with the mother of the little girl. The woman, clearly embarrassed by the situation, had been trying to comfort her daughter, but the weight of the moment was still heavy in the air. Judge Harrison sat in silence, trying to regain his focus, but his mind kept drifting back to the courtroom's usual rhythm. In the past, he had made it a point never to show weakness or any emotional vulnerability. The law was black and white. Justice was served through the rule of law, not sentiment. But now, with this innocent interruption, everything seemed to blur. How could he simply return to the case at hand, as though nothing had happened? Could he continue to wield authority the way he always had after this moment of vulnerability? The break gave him time to think, but it also left him feeling uncertain. He had built his career on command and control, but today he felt like he was losing his grip on both. The more he reflected, the more he realized that this wasn't just about a child interrupting a serious legal proceeding. This was about him confronting the reality of the human condition, the need for compassion, understanding, and connection. It was something he had long kept at arm's length. As the bailiff returned, followed by a court clerk with a tray of simple snacks, a sandwich, fruit, and a juice box, the young girl's face lit up. Her mother took the tray gratefully, thanking the bailiff before gently handing it to her daughter. The girl's eyes sparkled as she took a small bite of the sandwich, clearly relieved. Judge Harrison watched them from his desk, and for a moment he allowed himself to feel a rare sense of peace. It wasn't often that he had a chance to witness such a simple, tender moment. It wasn't often that he allowed himself to break from the strict, emotionally distant persona he had created over the years. But this little girl had forced him to confront something he hadn't realized he needed to face. The rest of the courtroom sat in an uneasy silence as they waited for the break to end. The defendant's attorney glanced at his watch, clearly anxious to continue. But everyone in the room, judges, lawyers, spectators, was now affected by what had just transpired. They could feel the shift, even if they couldn't quite articulate it. This wasn't just a case anymore. It had become a human story. When the 15 minutes were up, Judge Harrison cleared his throat and stood. His gaze moved toward the mother and her daughter. The little girl, now finished with her snack, was quietly looking up at him. The faintest of smiles tugged at the corner of his lips. He walked back to the bench, his posture a little less rigid than usual, his mind more open. "We will proceed now," Judge Harrison said, his voice calm yet filled with an unexpected warmth. He glanced over at the defense attorney who had returned to his seat. "Let's continue, but we do so with a reminder of what's truly important. This isn't just about the law, it's about humanity." The words left his mouth before he could fully comprehend them, and for a moment he felt the weight of their meaning. The courtroom fell silent again, but this time it wasn't the tense silence of waiting for a decision. It was the calm before something more meaningful, a realization that justice wasn't just about strict rules, but about understanding the human stories that brought people into the courtroom. The tension in the courtroom was gone, replaced by an unspoken understanding. Judge Harrison took his seat again, his gavel resting in front of him. He could feel the weight of the moment, the shift in the room, the change in himself. It wasn't about the case anymore. It was about humanity. And for the first time in years, the judge felt like he had truly seen it. He glanced down at the little girl, still clutching her stuffed bear, her eyes wide with innocence and wonder. Her mother smiled at him, grateful, but also holding a quiet sense of embarrassment. Judge Harrison met her gaze and nodded, as if silently acknowledging what had just transpired. "Let's continue," he said, his voice calm, his tone different from before. He wasn't just presiding over the case anymore. He was present in it, present in this moment, where empathy mattered just as much as the law. The courtroom fell into a respectful silence. The lawyers resumed their positions, but the atmosphere had shifted. Even the defendant's attorney, usually quick to press his case, seemed more thoughtful. The usual rigidity of legal proceedings had softened, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like everyone was truly human in that room. As the proceedings continued, Judge Harrison made his ruling, not just on the case, but on how he would approach his job moving forward. From that day on, he would carry a small piece of that moment with him, a reminder that the law, while important, was never more powerful than the simple kindness of a child's need.